The Mishnah or Mishnah, from the verb shana, or to study and review, also secondary, is the first major written redaction of the Jewish oral traditions known as the Oral Torah. It is also the first major work of rabbinic literature. The Mishnah was redacted by Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi before his death around 217 CE, in a time when, according to the Talmud, the persecution of the Jews and the passage of time raised the possibility that the details of the oral traditions of the Pharisees from the Second Temple period would be forgotten. The majority of the Mishnah is written in Mishnah Hebrew, while some parts are Aramaic. The Mishnah consists of 6 orders, each containing 7 to 12 tractates, 63 in total, and further subdivided into chapters and paragraphs or verses. The word Mishnah can also indicate a single paragraph or a verse of the work itself, i.e., the smallest unit of structure in the Mishnah. For this reason the whole work is sometimes called by the plural, Mishnayot. Structure. The term Mishnah originally referred to a method of teaching by presenting topics in a systematic order, as contrasted with Midrash, which meant teaching by following the order of the Bible. The Mishnah as a written compilation accordingly orders its content by subject matter, instead of by biblical context as the Midrashim do. Likewise it includes a much broader selection of halakhic subjects, and discusses individual subjects more thoroughly than the Midrashim. The Mishnah consists of 6 orders, each containing 7 to 12 tractates, 63 in total. Each masichet is divided into chapters and then paragraphs. In this last context, the word Mishnah means a single paragraph of the work, i.e., the smallest unit of structure, leading to the use of the plural, Mishnayot, for the whole work. Because of the division into 6 orders, the Mishnah is sometimes called Shas, though that term is more often used for the Talmud as a whole. The 6 orders are Zeraim, dealing with prayer and blessings, tithes and agricultural laws. Mode, pertaining to the laws of the Sabbath and the festivals. Nashim, concerning marriage and divorce, some forms of oaths and the laws of the Nazirite. Nezikon, dealing with civil and criminal law, the functioning of the courts and oaths. Kodashim, regarding sacrificial rites, the temple, and the dietary laws, and Tohorot, pertaining to the laws of purity and impurity, including the impurity of the dead, the laws of food purity and bodily purity. In each order, tractates so arranged from biggest to smallest. A popular mnemonic consists of the acronym Zedman-Nakot. The Babylonian Talmud states that there were either 600 or 700 orders of the Mishnah. Hillel the Elder organized them into 6 orders to make it easier to remember. The historical accuracy of this tradition is disputed. There is also a tradition that Ezra the scribe dictated from memory not only the 24 books of the Tanakh but 60 esoteric books. It is not known whether this is a reference to the Mishnah, but there is a case for saying that the Mishnah does consist of 60 tractates. Interestingly, Reuven Margolis posited that there were originally 7 orders of Mishnah, citing a Gaonic tradition on the existence of a 7th order containing the laws of Star, M and Barachot. Omissions. A number of important laws are not elaborated upon in the Mishnah. These include the laws of Zitzit, Tefillin, Mezuzot, the holiday of Hanukkah, and the laws of Gerim. These were later discussed in the minor tractates. Rabbi Nissim Gaon in his Hakdama Lamafdi Talmud writes that many of these laws were so well known that it was unnecessary for Rabbi Judah to discuss them. Reuven Margolis suggests that as the Mishnah was redacted after the Bar Kokhba revolt, Rabbi Judah could not have included discussion of Hanukkah, which commemorates the Jewish revolt against the Syrian Greeks. Similarly, there were then several decrees in place aimed at suppressing outward signs of national identity, including decrees against wearing tefillin and tzitzit, as conversion to Judaism was against Roman law. Rabbi Judah would not have discussed this. David Z.V.I. Hoffman suggests that there existed ancient texts in the form of the present-day Shulchan and Arush that discussed the basic laws of day-to-day living, and it was therefore not necessary to focus on these laws in the Mishnah. Mishnah, Gemara and Talmud. Rabbinic commentaries on the Mishnah from the next 4 centuries, done in the land of Israel and in Babylonia, were eventually redacted and compiled as well. In themselves they are known as Gemara. The books which set out the Mishnah in its original structure, together with the associated Gemara, are known as Talmuds. 2 Talmuds were compiled, Babylonian Talmud and Jerusalem Talmud. Unlike the Hebrew Mishnah, the Gemara is written primarily in Aramaic. Content and purpose. The Mishnah teaches the oral traditions by example, presenting actual cases being brought to judgment, usually along with the debate on the matter and the judgment that was given by a notable rabbi based on the halachah, mitzvot, and spirit of the teaching that guided his decision. In this way, it brings to everyday reality the practice of the mitzvot as presented in the Bible, and aims to cover all aspects of human living, serve as an example for future judgments, and, most important, demonstrate pragmatic exercise of the biblical laws, which was much needed since the time when the Second Temple was destroyed. The Mishnah does not claim to be the development of new laws, but rather the collection of existing traditions. The term Mishnah is related to the verb shana, to teach or repeat, and to the adjectives sheni and mishni, meaning second. It is thus named for being both the one written authority secondary to the Tanakh as a basis for the passing of judgment, a source and a tool for creating laws, and the first of many books to complement the Bible in certain aspects. Rabbis expounded on and debated the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, without the benefit of written works, though some may have made private notes, for example of court decisions. The oral traditions were far from monolithic, and varied among various schools, the most famous of which were the House of Shammai and the House of Hillel. After First Jewish-Roman War in 70 CE, with the end of the Second Temple Jewish Center in Jerusalem, Jewish social and legal norms were in upheaval. The rabbis were faced with the new reality of Judaism without a temple and Judea without autonomy. It is during this period that rabbinic discourse began to be recorded in writing. The possibility was felt that the details of the oral traditions of the Pharisees from the Second Temple period would be forgotten, so the justification was found to have these oral laws transcribed. Over time, different traditions of the oral law came into being, raising problems of interpretation. According to the Mevo HaTalmud, many rulings were given in a specific context, but would be taken out of it, or a ruling was revisited but the second ruling would not become popularly known. To correct this, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi took up the redaction of the Mishnah. If a point was of no conflict, he kept its language; where there was conflict, he reordered the opinions and ruled, and he clarified where context was not given. The idea was not to use his own discretion, but rather to examine the tradition as far back as he could, and only supplement his required. The Mishnah and the Hebrew Bible. According to Rabbinical Judaism, the oral Torah was given to Moses with the Torah at Mount Sinai, as an exposition to the latter. The accumulated traditions of the oral law, expounded by scholars in each generation from Moses onward, is considered as the necessary basis for the interpretation, and often for the reading, of the written law. Jews sometimes refer to this as the Masorah, roughly translated as tradition, though that word is often used in a narrower sense to mean traditions concerning the editing and reading of the biblical text. The resulting Jewish law and custom is called halakha. While most discussions in the Mishnah concern the correct way to carry out laws recorded in the Torah, it usually presents its conclusions without explicitly linking them to any scriptural passage, though scriptural quotations do occur. For this reason it is arranged in order of topics rather than in the form of a biblical commentary. The Midrash halakha, by contrast, while presenting similar laws, does so in the form of a biblical commentary and explicitly links its conclusions to details in the biblical text. These midrashim often predate the Mishnah. The Mishnah also quotes the Torah for principles not associated with law, but just as practical advice, even at times for humor or as guidance for understanding historical debates. Authorship. The rabbis who contributed to the Mishnah are known as the Tannaim, of whom approximately 120 are known. The period during which the Mishnah was assembled spanned about 130 years, or 5 generations, in the 1st and 2nd centuries CE. Yehuda HaNasi is credited with the final redaction and publication of the Mishnah, though there have been a few additions since his time. Those passages that cite him or his grandson, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, and the end of Tractate Tatar, which refers to the period after Rabbi's death. One must also note that in addition to redacting the Mishnah, Rabbi and his court also ruled on which opinions should be followed, though the rulings do not always appear in the text. Most of the Mishnah is related without attribution. This usually indicates that many sages taught so, or that Yehuda HaNasi ruled so. The halakhic ruling usually follows that view. Sometimes, however, it appears to be the opinion of a single sage, and the view of the sages collectively is given separately. As Yehuda HaNasi went through the tractates, the Mishnah was set forth. But throughout his life some parts were updated as new information came to light. Because of the proliferation of earlier versions, it was deemed too hard to retract anything already released, and therefore a second version of certain laws were released. The Talmud refers to these differing versions as Mishnah Rishona and Mishnah Acharona. David Zvi Hoffman suggests that Mishnah Rishona actually refers to texts from earlier sages upon which Rabbi based his Mishnah. The Talmud records a tradition that unattributed statements of the law represent the views of Rabbi Meir, which supports the theory that he was the author of an earlier collection. For this reason, the few passages that actually say, "This is the view of Rabbi Meir," represent cases where the author intended to present Rabbi Meir's view as a minority opinion, not representing the accepted law. There are also references to the Mishnah of Rabbi Akiva, suggesting a still earlier collection. On the other hand, these references may simply mean his teachings in general. Another possibility is that Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Meir established the divisions and order of subjects in the Mishnah, making them the authors of a school curriculum rather than of a book. Authorities are divided on whether Rabbi recorded the Mishnah in writing or established it as an oral text for memorization. The most important early account of its composition, the Epistle of Sheraragaon, is ambiguous on the point, though the Spanish recension leans to the theory that the Mishnah was written. However, the Talmud records that, in every study session, there was a person called the Tanna appointed to recite the Mishnah passage under discussion. This may indicate that, even if the Mishnah was reduced to writing, it was not available on general distribution. Acceptance. Some Jews did not accept the written codification of the oral law at all, known as Karaites. They comprised a significant portion of the world Jewish population in the 10th and 11th centuries CE, and remain extant, although they currently number in the thousands.